Hello and welcome to another episode of the Happy Head podcast. My name is Paul and I am your host. Now, I'm laughing because I almost forgot to press the record button because my guest Andrea, who I'm going to introduce you to in a second, we were chatting. The conversation's kind of already gone in 15 different directions, and it's a good job I remembered to record because we could have been talking for an hour, Andrea, and not press record. Isn't that true?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I was just asking a very peculiar question. You'll understand in a second. The usual kind of thing. How are you going? How's it going? What's the weather? And all that kind of thing. And then Andrea said this thing. She said, "I'm getting a skip. I'm really looking forward to getting a skip." And she's getting like all kind of like orgasmic about getting a skip. And I'm wary of people that get turned on by skips. Because like it's that dreaded DIY word, and I don't do DIY. You know that. So listen, Andrea, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. And I do need to be clear, I am not doing DIY either, but I am very excited about the arrival of my skip nonetheless.
God, can you hear that? Excited about the skip. It's kind of, I'm just glad you, wherever you are in the world, and I'm down here because it's scary. Yeah. Okay, look, so I've got to ask, why are we getting a skip? And why is it so
Oh,
exciting?
it's so exciting because I have finally come to the point where I am ready to get rid of a whole load of stuff that I've probably been carrying around for far too long, and make some space so that I can now do life differently.
Wow. Okay, so I've got to ask, and obviously keeping it decent, what kind of stuff are we talking about?
We're talking all sorts of stuff. I basically left the marital home, there's the clue, in a bit of a hurry. I was made homeless by my now ex-husband. And so it was literally throw stuff in boxes and bags, get out, find somewhere to hide. And I basically just packed bags and left. And within those bags, there's a huge mixture of everything from my son's primary school uniforms, 26 years of textbooks from, sort of fiction through to non-fiction, through to work stuff, and clothes that there is more chance of me flying to the moon than ever wearing again. So it's time to get rid of the past once and for all.
I know what you mean about clothes because I don't know why it was, but I just didn't get rid of anything. And then I love my flat. Okay, I live in a rented flat, two bedrooms, a big Victorian thing, but it's got no storage space. And in the end, it was like I couldn't buy any new clothes because there was no room. So I sat down one day, and a friend of mine came over, and she said, "Look, you know what you got to do, don't you?" And I went, "No." Look at all this. When she get like, when was the last time you wore this? And I went kind of like 1872. So that went in the bin. And what about this? And literally item by item by item, my wardrobe was kind of like this. And then after about a period of 15 or 20 minutes, it shrunk down to me only having about three items left on the rack. And that doesn't include all the stuff that came out of the drawers and the cupboards. And, you know, I mean, I don't know what it is, but men just with underwear, with pants, yeah, we just don't get rid of them. We just wear them until they kind of fall off, and you got to go and buy some more. So she like forced me to go to Primani and buy some more. And I'm not even going to say it was a cathartic exercise. It didn't make me feel good. So I just made me realize what an idiot I'd been for holding on to all this stuff that I didn't need anymore, that I couldn't wear anymore, that didn't fit, or just had so many holes and it wasn't even fashionable.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah, no. My clothes challenge is that they vary in size. So I could probably clothe somebody ranging from a size 8 to a size 18. Because you just never know when I might need that size again.
but that's a huge. I mean, even I know that size 8 is like sort of finger size, and size 18 is kind of that size. Surely you've not gone in between them.
Absolutely, I have over time, for sure, for sure. After I'd had my son, I was a size 8, and absolutely have hung on to things in the hope that, but I'm still trying to shed my baby weight, but my son is now 23. So I think I have to accept defeat.
Or you've got to make some changes to your diet, perhaps. because I've
Yes.
got baby weight as well. Well, no, I'm
Mm.
calling it pandemic weight actually.
Okay. Yeah. No, I've got a couple of Corona stone for
Yeah,
sure.
Corona. I've got definitely a Corona stone, and it's time to go. And it's just because with the gyms being shut, that was my excuse. Walking
Mm.
and doing push-ups and stuff. You weren't allowed to do those, were you?
No, clearly not. Clearly not.
So yeah, it's but I get it. I get it. So what we're going to talk about? You moving out this house, was this a long time ago? Was it recent?
It was, oh gosh, must be about 5 years ago now. Yeah, there or thereabouts. It was a really, let's say, an unplanned move. It was a move that probably should have happened at least 10 years earlier, but I shied away from having the difficult conversation that I needed to have. And so gradually over time, things just got worse until one night I found myself up on the main road with my dog on a lead. And people would perhaps just have thought that there was a woman taking their dog for a walk, except it was 2 in the morning, it was freezing cold, and I was wearing my nightie and my red tartan wellies. And basically, I believed that I was running for my life that night.
Jeez.
And so, for the want of a difficult conversation, I ended up with the intention of taking my own life. And so the moving out of the home was wrapped up in court cases and non-molestation orders and occupational orders. And in the end, as I said, I was made homeless. And I spent a couple of months sofa surfing. There was me, the dog, and my laptop, and all my stuff was in storage. And then eventually, I managed to get a home of my own, brought everything out of storage, and there we are back with the skip. It's a full circle event.
So is this going to be that word I can't say, a cathartic exercise for you, or is it just going to be like just get the crap out, get it in the skip, and move on?
It's just time. It's time to do life differently. I spent so long putting up with my life the way it was and doing all sorts of stuff that was really a distraction from the reality of the life that I was living. I set up a charity. I would work wherever in the country, which meant 18,000 motorway miles a year, 3 nights a week in a hotel. I did so much to avoid how desperately unhappy I was at home. And it's taken me a long time to get to this place where actually I know I can be happy. And it's time to get rid of the crap that I'm carrying around, emotionally as well as physically.
What was difficult about having the difficult conversation? Now, I know this sounds like a bit of a contradiction in terms, but
Mm,
you knew things weren't working, and like you just
yep.
mentioned, you should have moved out 10 years earlier.
Yep.
What kind of stopped you from just saying, "Sod it, it's going to be painful now, but at least I can just get myself out and start again"? What stopped you doing that?
I guess looking back, I knew that I didn't know the name for it then, but I know the name now. I was married to a narcissist. And I knew that by having the conversation that I really should have, the walls literally would come tumbling down. And I felt also responsible for my son. I think, like a lot of women, we kind of have that feeling that, we have a responsibility to the child, to the children. And so I stayed, and then things happened. My ex-husband was arrested and charged with indecent exposure. So that kind of takes up a chunk of your time while you're dealing with that and social services. Then his father got cancer, and there were just so many things that happened that meant it was never the right time.
Mm-hmm.
And he was also a director of my business. He controlled all our finances, insurance, everything of that ilk, and persuaded me that actually, if I didn't have him, I simply wouldn't be able to cope. He also had a dreadful temper. Um, I spent money replacing my teeth just recently. So that was a nice cathartic event. And basically, I was trying to put off the inevitable. I was trying to avoid what I knew would happen,
Mhm.
and by God, did it happen.
So you moved out with all of this stuff that you didn't need anymore.
Hmm.
How did you kind of restart your life again? What got you going to, you've made the decision, you've moved out, you're going through all the messy stuff that involves the
Yeah.
divorce and whatever else was going on. How do you kind of deal with that and rebuilding, restarting, renewing your life?
To be honest with you, I didn't. My intention was to end my life. I had a plan to as to how I was going to make that happen, and suicide was very much my intention because I literally felt completely overwhelmed. At the time, I described it like climbing up a slag heap wearing flip flops, completely unprepared for it. Every step forward was three steps back, and it bloody hurt when you fell. And it was just the most horrendous experience because I'd put so much energy into masking the reality and distracting myself from what was happening over the last 10 years that when the big waves hit, there was literally nothing in the tank. And so, being made homeless, I then discovered that bank accounts had been emptied. I was getting letters from the courts about debts that I knew nothing about. And it all was just too much. So, unfortunately, I didn't flee and start to rebuild my life. My intention was to end my life. And it was purely and simply one night I had a conversation with someone who suggested that perhaps there was an alternative. And I was persuaded to phone the Samaritans, which I did. And I have no idea who the lady is, and I probably never will, but she had a beautiful, calm, gentle Scottish voice. And she suggested that I perhaps put my decision on pause until I explored options because perhaps now wasn't the right time to make that decision. And literally came off that call and in that moment decided that I made a promise to the universe that if I got through that hole, that I would do something useful to pay back what that lady had done for me. Because when you're thinking about ending your life, you don't think about family and friends and all of that. What you do think about is ending the pain, stopping the torment, making the overwhelm go away. And really, that lady that night gave me an opportunity to recognize that actually it wasn't going to end that way. I was not going to let it end that way because my son had already lost his father. Despite my 10 years of desperately trying to keep my son with a father, my son has now changed his name by deed poll, by the way. My son now has my maiden name. So, despite all my efforts to maintain that relationship, it wasn't to be. And so I decided that actually my son needed at least one decent parent. And so that's kind of when the road back from rock bottom really began. And my first intention was to go and train as a volunteer with the Samaritans because I felt that, that lady had done that for me and that was the least I could do. And then I got to thinking that, I've been in the corporate world for 26 years, delivering training to managers and leaders across all different sectors, and thought, you know what, actually, maybe I could do something that would even stop people having to get to the Samaritan stage. If I can make a difference within organizations so that managers and leaders feel able to have crucial conversations with their team, um, surely, that would be something worth doing. And so, as soon as I was well again myself, I actually had to borrow the money from some friends. And I went and qualified as a suicide intervention tutor and built it into the business of confident conversations, which is something that I was doing anyway with managers around things like performance, absence, that kind of thing. So it just became an addition to what was already an established framework. And I have to say, since I've done that, I get a lot more satisfaction talking to managers about suicide prevention than I ever did about appraisal skills.
Yeah, a bit of a different world. Just taking you back a second, after
Yeah.
after the call with this lovely Scottish lady,
Mm.
you obviously made the decision that now wasn't
Yeah.
the right time.
Yeah.
What did you actually? This sounds like a bizarre question, but what did you actually do? What did you kind of say? Right, I'm just going to get busy. I'm going to do stuff, or because I mean, I've been where you were, and I've
Mm.
actually tried to kill myself, ended up in hospital, kind of thing. So I understand about the overwhelm
Mm.
and feeling that nobody understands, nobody cares, and you just don't think about anything else. So, what was it after that call that got you moving away
Mm-hmm.
from the bad place towards a better place?
I basically admitted to people around me exactly how I was feeling, because the more you try to contain it, the more you hide it, the more you pretend everything's fine. All the energy that goes into that pretending is energy that you could be using to actually fix stuff.
Mm.
And I will always be grateful to a number of women, it was, who became my tribe. And funnily enough, we're talking at the moment, obviously, during the lockdown version 3, where we've not got that much connection. But even at that time, these people weren't local to me. One was in the south of France, one was in North Wales, the other one was actually down in your part of the world. She was down in Kent. And literally 3 people through a bit of a, I guess, almost like a tag team setup kept me alive. And obviously my son, because at that point my son then realized exactly, how I was feeling and what was going on. And so it was that social scaffold, that's the way I now describe it.
Mm-hmm. Did you have the conversation with your son about how you were feeling and what have you?
Yeah, he knew. I mean, luckily he was away at uni, so he missed actually physically experiencing some of the stuff that I was going through. And I tried to not let him know anything that I didn't feel he needed to know.
Mm.
But I remember one time he came home because he was worried about me. And I guess he'd kind of read between the lines. And we were both trying to protect each other, I think.
Don't worry about it. It's fine. It's just the rawness, the life of a podcast. So what just threw me there because you were looking away. So we're healing. We're back at work. We're in the new place. We're doing stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What happens next? Did you go straight into doing this retraining, or did you
No,
kind of think, no, I'm going to carry on with what I'm doing now with the
it
course?
wasn't. I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't in a fit state to work.
Oh,
I
okay.
I
Right. Okay.
literally was. I literally was at rock bottom, and couldn't see a way back. And do you want me to go and sort that?
That's all right. It's fine. Carry on.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. As long as you're happy, I'm happy.
Okay. No, we've got the added excitement today of the gas men digging up pipes outside the house, you see, so it's all good fun here. No, I literally couldn't work. I literally was on my knees, incapable. I couldn't even pay a bill. I couldn't take a parcel to the post office. Literally just wanted to be under the duvet and for the world to
Mm.
leave me alone. And as I say, if it wasn't for the sort of the women in my life, they would literally be checking in on me on a day-to-day basis with questions like, have you eaten today? And it really was that sort of slow process. And I'm not going to suggest, I'm not going to lie and say, my life turned around in an instant, because it damn well didn't. It was a long way back up that road. And fortunately, because I'd had to move house, I ended up living in a different area where the police are much more responsive around domestic violence, domestic abuse. So I felt safer in my home. I had a new GP, again, with a different attitude, and I ended up with some quite a selection of medication at one point. And I also signed up for CBT, which was great to a certain extent. And then I came across a lady in Manchester who was absolutely fabulous, and I chose to work with her. And it was a long, slow process. But once I'd decided that that wasn't going to be the end, I made it my business to put things into my life that meant I'd always got a foothold. And so whether it was Sally, my therapist, whether it was, Jane or Sarah or Alison, the three ladies that kept me propped up, I deliberately planned stuff in so there was a bit of a kind of foothold back. And whenever I felt myself wobbling, would have an honest conversation with one of them and say, this is where I am. And you know what? I actually think that that made a massive difference, because I do believe that when all the thoughts are just in your head, the intensity of that just drags you down. So being able to phone Alison, for example, and say, Ali, I'm having a really bad day. This is where I am. And just have somebody say, right, okay, so let's think about this logically. What do you need to do today? Let's make a list. And just having that little stepping stones. And then I started to do bits and pieces of work because, I mean, I've been in and around the industry I've been self-employed for 21 years. I've got some fantastic clients, some of whom knew what I'd gone through. And so I was able to start doing bits and pieces of work for people like that, which gave me, that kind of sense that I'm all right. And then got to a point where it was like, right, now I'm ready to take this on. So that's when I sort of went into investigating, what can I do? How do I get qualified? What's the best thing to do? Many years ago, I was a tutor with CIPD, so I'm a bit kind of snobbish when it comes to what does training need to look like. So I discounted a couple of options that I came across, and actually went with the City and Guilds qualification, the only UK accredited qualification in suicide intervention, and became a tutor. And I remember my first day in the room with all these other people, and I thought, shit, I'm in the wrong room. These people are all awesome people. They've all done this or that or the other. They are amazing. There was a guy there who he was ex-police, and he'd just come back from working with the Australian police force because he'd got, superpowers in this. And there was women there who'd been like the director of social services. And I remember thinking, shit, I'm out my depth. I've got so much to learn. And actually, what I have learned is to make a difference to someone in crisis, all you really need to be is a decent human being. You don't need to be a therapist. You don't need to be a counselor. You don't have to have, dealt with the sort of some of the suicide cases that the guy from the police had. You just need to be a decent human being who will take time to recognize when somebody is struggling and have a conversation that matters. Because if all that does is release the intensity in your head and allows you to say out loud, this is how I'm feeling, to me, that in itself just gives you a bit of headspace to perhaps look at other stuff, if that makes sense.
No, I completely agree. All it takes is the ability to say, have you eaten today?
Yeah.
No. Well, what have you got in the kitchen?
Yeah, for sure.
Take me in the kitchen with you and go and make some
Yeah.
toast and peanut butter, whatever. That's
Yeah.
all it takes to help someone. People have these fancy notions that you need degrees in this and that and the other,
No.
but you don't. I watched a video, and I can't remember the guy's name now, but he was going around. He lost a very dear friend of his who was his partner in crime on a radio.
Mm.
And he went around talking to people, young guys who kind of had the same scenario. And there was a couple of fellows he was talking to who said, all you got to do is say, are you okay too? And what they meant was most people go, especially blokes, they go, you're all
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
mate.
Yeah.
You're all right, mate. They say it once, and then the
Yeah.
response, yeah, I'm okay. And that's the end of it. But what they were saying is, no, say it twice. If you
Absolutely.
say it
The rule
twice,
is
then
ask twice. Yeah.
ask twice. You start the conversation going, and then,
Yeah.
oh, right, what are you doing? Have you had something to eat? And that's all it takes. And that's
sure.
I love that notion of being in the room full of all these brilliant people, and you think, am I in the right room? But then there's the old cliche of never be the smartest person in the room.
No, I know, but they'd all got ologies and stuff,
Oh, yeah, ologies. I don't
way
do
above,
ologies.
way above. But no, yeah, I mean, you're absolutely spot on. I've just finished. We just rolled out suicide intervention training across Greater Manchester, as part of the Shine a Light on Suicide campaign, and we've trained 500 frontline workers. And some of those people were volunteers at food banks. You know, they'd I don't know, a retired head teacher who'd put her hand up to help out during COVID, thinking volunteering at the food banks, handing out tins of beans. Never for 1 minute did she anticipate having conversations with people whose intention was to end their lives, you know? So I've worked with those. We've had people from Northwest Ambulance Service, from Greater Manchester Police. We've had such a variety of people on that training, and every single one of them has gone away going, oh my God, I could have a conversation now about this, because you really don't need any expertise. You don't need to be a mental health expert. In fact, the majority of deaths by suicide are not people with a mental illness.
Mm,
They're people who are simply overwhelmed by life. And so
absolutely.
it's a fallacy to think that, and we don't have to have the solution. Often people say to me, oh, Andrea, I couldn't have that conversation because I wouldn't know what to say. What if I make it worse? Or I wouldn't know what solution to offer. You don't need to do that. It's a combination of compassion and curiosity. That's all you need to make a difference to somebody in crisis. You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to have a willingness to say, I don't know the answer, mate, but I'm going to help you find it. Let's
Absolutely.
let's Google together, you know?
Yeah, Google is your friend.
Mm,
So what does I mean, obviously without going in detail, what does your
mm.
training kind of look like? What do people go through? Yeah, what does the training look like? I can't think of a better
Okay,
phrase.
so the program that we've just rolled out across Greater Manchester is just a little 3-part program. The first bit sort of introduces people to the subject of suicide. I mean, how many people won't even say the word?
Hmm,
So let's understand the issue. Let's understand just how widespread it is. Let's recognise in the UK we have a problem. The second part looks at how to structure the conversation. So, what sort of questions should I ask? What do I need to understand? We talk a lot about the importance of that listening thing, listening to understand rather than listening to reply. So, how do I have a conversation? And the third bit is about the signposting and helping that person stay safe. So, it's a very practically oriented little program that says if you notice that somebody's struggling, here's how to have a conversation so that you broach the subject in a way that's helpful, and here's how you signpost them. It's about you helping them get the help they need. It's not about you becoming the helper.
absolutely. That's the critical factor, isn't it? It's about
Yeah.
having being there to have a conversation, and then if when the person says, I need some help, saying, okay, well,
Mm.
look, what about this, that, or the other?
Let's have a look at this together.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the analogy that I often use in the training. Is it's a bit like if you came across somebody that was having a heart attack and you're the first aider, you'd probably know to maybe start CPR. But when the paramedics rock up, you're not going to say, it's all right, mate, I've got this one covered. You step down. Yeah. It's about recognizing your role and boundaries and just understanding it's about connecting people with the help they need. It's not taking them home and wrapping them in bubble wrap and keeping them safe in your spare bedroom.
Complete. I apologize. I'm just laughing there because I imagine a comedy scene where the paramedics rock up and you go, "No, no, I've got this, mate." So they go, "Okay, fella, no worries," and they go off again.
Yeah, no. And do you know what? We laugh, but I said to you about choosing carefully the training that I wanted to deliver, because actually there's some training where I do believe people are left believing that they now suddenly have these new superpowers. And actually, that's not what it's about at all. It's
Mm.
about the boundary and the role. It's just about being a decent human being and being able to connect somebody to whatever help it is they need.
Yeah, it's been a first aider, but in a different
For
format. So
sure.
rather doing CPR,
For
it's
sure.
talk to me, having the conversation. Have you
Yeah.
eaten? Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier on in the conversation, Andrea, that you set up a charity.
Nothing to do with this.
Nothing to do with this. All right. I had, so there you go. Assume making an ass of you and me. What a great word.
Yeah,
Um,
no.
so what is it then? What's the
My
charity that I
charity
mentioned?
is a dog rescue.
Hang on. Yeah, that makes complete sense.
But I know, you see, I'm a complete champion for the underdog. And
Oof.
I set up a rescue charity 9, 10 years ago now. I've worked in and around dog rescue for 15 plus years, and really wanted to be able to make a difference for those poor little buggers that nobody wanted, typically your brindle bull terriers. But looking back now, I realise that that was a distraction from my marriage, and it also gave me a huge amount of satisfaction and self-worth, again, that I wasn't getting at home. So it's weird what we do, isn't it, to, sort of
Mm.
get what we need. Some
But that's
people may use, I don't know, drugs or alcohol as a way of getting that dopamine hit. Mine was rescuing brindle staffies that nobody wanted from a dog pound, because that gave me the dopamine hit.
so. Do you still do that? Do you have
Yeah.
a place where you rescue dogs and they come in and get rescued?
We did up until the whole COVID thing. And so we are now without premises. So, what we've decided to do for now is to support small independent rescues that perhaps haven't got the network that we've managed to build up over time. So, we're now doing more of a fundraising and supporting role for now. And it's also been quite good for me, actually, to not have that hands-on role. Now you can understand why there's lots of dog barking going on. Welcome to my world. Yeah, so
So,
it's been good. It's been good.
so will you take it up again once lockdown 3 is done and hopefully there's no more lockdown 4? Will you start taking stray doggies back in again?
Yeah, we'll see what it looks like. I have an awful, terrible feeling that there will be a lot of dogs in rescue following lockdown, because my
I
sense
guarantee it.
is
I
a lot of
guarantee it.
people have taken them on without thinking ahead. So yeah, I've got an awful sneaking suspicion that the rescue activity will have to pick up again.
Yeah, once people get unfurloughed and back into
Yeah,
work, that lovely little puppy will be left alone,
yeah.
will wreck the brand new sofa,
Hmm.
and they'll be queuing up to hand them back. Because I mean, I love dogs, and I really, really want to get. My last dog was a rescue, and I
Mm,
want to get a dog. But obviously, with lockdown and that, you can't get to see
mm,
dogs. And
yeah,
I know, sadly, very sadly, like you, that come the back end of this year, people like yourselves are going to be
for sure.
inundated with 8 month to 1 year old dogs that nobody wants, because well, it's not they don't
Without a
want
doubt.
them, it's just that they don't have the time to do with them anymore, and they didn't. It's kind of like,
No.
it's like that old cliche,
And
isn't it? Was it a dog is for life, not just for Christmas?
absolutely, a dog is for life, not just for lockdown.
Yeah.
And there's going to be problems for the dogs, because if people have been home 24/7, dogs aren't used to being on their own.
Mm.
There's going to be that whole separation, the anxiety that goes with that. So yeah, as I say, I've got a sneaking suspicion we may get quite busy again. But at the end of the day, that for me is a complete different sphere than my working day. And so again, that's just part and parcel of my whole well-being package, which takes us nicely back to where we were, Paul, and fits in with the skip, because it's now time to do life differently. I'm a long way from where I was, and it's time to kind of put the full stop at the end of that paragraph and just kick forward.
Wow, that's brilliant. I really do love your attitude, because a lot of people sadly end up far worse
Mm,
than they wanted to be, because like you mentioned a couple of seconds ago, your dopamine hit was taking care of dogs and all
yeah,
the associated with that. But some people go down, unfortunately, the abuse of substances,
yeah,
and that just leads
absolutely.
down a very dark, miserable,
Yeah,
lonely road, and can, if they don't get help, go to the wrong kind of place entirely.
yeah,
So
for
the
sure.
way you've done things, the way you've made that decision, the way you move forward, the way you've now kind of said, right, that's it, line in the sand, all this crap's going in my lovely, adorable
Mm,
skip.
mm.
Are you going to give it a name, by the way, your skip?
I was just thinking, actually, I should take a photograph of it and send it to you. I should make my skip famous,
Yeah,
maybe on
make a yeah, yeah,
LinkedIn.
yeah. Well, people make all kinds of things famous. Let's make skips famous. There should be a charity now. Make my skip famous. 60 quid a day.
Yeah, no, but no, you're right. You know, sometimes people will use other coping
Mm,
strategies that then can become a challenge, a problem, all of its own. And again, there's going to be some of that as a result of lockdown. Lots of people, joking aside, we talked earlier about the corona stone. So some people, it may have been the sugar, or some people may have decided, well, why can't I have a couple of glasses of wine on a Wednesday night? I'm not driving anywhere tomorrow. I don't normally drink midweek, but why wouldn't I? So there's also the risk of all sorts of habits like that that we're kind of taking forward. And I just think the next few months is just going to be quite wobbly for a lot of people.
mm.
So be
I
a
agree.
decent human being and keep an eye out for them.
I agree. I completely agree. I've got something in mind myself that I might be thinking of, like a 5-day challenge to help people, because I've heard lots of people, not even about going down the drug and alcohol route,
Mm.
but talking about being anxious about getting out
Yeah.
there again, worrying
Yep.
about how to get out there again, how to go
For
back to
sure.
work and all this kind of stuff. And it's,
Yep.
yeah, there's definitely going to be a wobbly few months.
Mm.
So your training, Andrew, you said it was at Greater Manchester. Do you have like an online thing, or do
Yes.
you work in person? How do you do your thing?
There's a couple of different options. Obviously, we've been doing everything online. Everything's been done virtually
Sure.
for the last 12 months. And we've got various options in the suicide intervention training, whether it's a half day or a full day, whether you want to go the whole hog and get the qualification with City and Guilds. There's lots of different options. But I also do a taster session for organisations who perhaps just want to get people talking about mental health and about that slippery slope from stress to distress. So there's lots of different ways. I'm just really keen to get people talking. And I do fundamentally believe it's the silence that kills. So the more we can raise awareness and get people talking, not so that we wait for people to reach out, because when you're carrying the weight of the world already, the strength to reach out and ask for help is a little bit too much. I want people to be prepared to reach in and to say, are you all right, mate? I'm a little bit worried about you. Are you sure everything's okay? See, there you go, ask twice. And so we've put together a number of different options to really get organisations talking.
I completely agree. I want to see this treated the same way you would a broken arm. So you've
Mm,
broken your arm,
mm.
your arm's in a sling, and you go down the pub or you're at home, and does it hurt? No, it's
Yeah.
actually, it's all right now, but it's really, I can't move. And that's how it should be. It shouldn't be
Mm,
it shouldn't, at the moment, it's a thing.
yeah.
A broken arm isn't a thing. It just, between your two mates, it's a thing because
Mm,
you obviously can see it. But for
mm,
the rest of the world, oh, there's a bloke with a broken arm. That's how I want to see this
mm,
whole. I'm not going to call it mental health. I'm talking about the suicide prevention side of things. It
mm.
should be like that. It shouldn't be extraordinary. It should
No,
be,
it's another human condition.
yeah.
It's another
That's
human condition. So how come I can talk to you quite comfortably about your broken arm without being an orthopedic specialist,
exactly.
but I'm scared of talking to you about your broken brain because I'm not a mental health expert? Go figure. How does that even work? And I could quite easily say to people, oh, do you know what? I didn't sleep well last night. I've got a terrible toothache. And people would say things like, oh, bloody hell, there's nothing worse than toothache, maybe earache. Well, you never know. Have you got some painkillers? Have you got an appointment? And we'd have that conversation without even blinking an eye. But if I said I didn't sleep very well last night because actually my anxiety is off the scale and I'm having really difficult thoughts, geez, people would be running for the hills. People would rather chew off their own arm than talk about the fact that I'm having difficult thoughts and emotions. But you know what? It's just another human condition. And 6,507 people died by suicide in the UK in 2018.
Mm.
That's the equivalent of an aeroplane full of passengers falling out of the sky and killing everybody on board every month for a year. Now, if that was happening in the UK, if we literally had a passenger aeroplane with 400 people fall out of the sky and kill everybody on board, there would be uproar. We wouldn't be sitting around rolling our eyes and tutting. But that's the numbers that we're talking
Mm.
about in terms of the number of people that die by suicide. 75% of them are men.
I want, yeah.
Men especially are less likely to talk about it because of all the crap that society tells them, you know? However, we also need to look at the fact that the biggest increase over the last few years has actually been young females between the ages of 16 and 24. So, whilst absolutely we need to concentrate and look at the whole male scene, we mustn't ever believe that anybody is immune. And we have to look at society as a whole.
Yeah, I completely agree because age isn't a factor and gender isn't a factor. It's circumstance that's the factor.
Absolutely. We know that, suicide rarely happens as a result of a one off event. More often than not, it's a complex combination of a person's biology, psychology, past life, and current life circumstance.
Hmm.
So it doesn't have to be the middle aged man, facing redundancy, dealing with divorce, having his family estranged from him. It could be the menopausal woman who biologically is more likely to, be diagnosed with depression and suicide ideation. It could be the young black gay male that turns to drugs as a way of making himself feel better. But we need to step away from, oh, she didn't look like she was suicidal. What does it look like? Not everybody who's having thoughts of suicide is going to be stood on the bridge staring down into the water below.
With a big head and hat on their head.
Absolutely. They could be sat opposite you in a team meeting. It could be a client. It could be a member of your team. There isn't a one size fits all. And we really need to acknowledge that nobody is immune. It's not about being weak or strong, male, female, alpha or otherwise. It's about recognizing that we've all got a limit. And who the hell am I to judge yours? Because I am never going to have the same unique combination of biology, psychology, past life, and current life as you. So how the hell am I in a place to say woulda, shoulda, coulda? I don't know you. I've not lived your life. I've not walked in your shoes. Why not just be a decent human being and say, are you all right, mate? You just don't seem to be yourself at the minute.
Absolutely. I just couldn't agree more. What one thing to finish off with, Andrea, what's one thing anyone could do who's feeling not good at the moment? What's one thing they can do?
Talk to somebody who will give you the time and listen. And that somebody might be a mate, it might be a manager, it might be your mum, it might be Samaritans, 116 123 if you need the number. But talk to somebody about how you're feeling, because there is an alternative. There will always be an alternative. We just need to help you find it.
Yeah, you might not see it, but it's there.
Absolutely. There is always a solution, whatever the problem. You might just need a little bit of help finding the right solution for you. But please talk to people. Just let them know what's going on for you in your world.
Okay, Andrea, on that note, listen, thank you so much. It's been a wide-ranging and brilliant conversation. I really appreciate it. And hopefully I'll get that picture of your skip soon.
Yes, you will indeed. I might even put a ribbon on it for you, Paul. You never know, you're lucky in a raffle.
Oh, listen, Andrea, thank you so much for chatting with me. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, folks. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye now.